All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to Uncle Bernie Sanders lay down the law in the Constitution. It is, it was designed just so we didn't have these kind of problems and to actually protect the people, which this whole world is by its people, the country by its people, everything paid for, everything. So let's listen to old Bernie. Look at the cardinal. All glory goes to God. What a beautiful bird. Beautiful bird. So let's listen to Bernie, Uncle Bernie lay down the law. Oh, we got double cardinals. We got double cardinals here.
Billion richer, and Bezos has become 28 billion richer since election day. 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured in terms of health care. Does anyone really think that the oligarchs give a damn about ordinary? Trust me, they don't. Mr. President, we are living in an extremely dangerous time. And future generations will look back at this moment, what we do right now, and remember whether we had the courage to defend our democracy against the growing threats of oligarchy and authoritarianism. They will remember whether we stood with President Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, who in 1863, looking out over a battlefield where thousands of people had died, thousands of soldiers died in the fight against slavery, and he stated that, quote, "This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Do we stand with Lincoln's vision of America, or do we sit idly by and allow this country to move into a new vision? And that is a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, for the billionaire class. But it is not just oligarchy that we should be concerned about. Not just the reality that today 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million. 3 people, more wealth than the bottom 170 million Americans. It is not just that the gap between the very, very rich and everyone else is growing wider. And it is not just that we have more income and wealth inequality today than we have ever had. On top of all of that, the reality is that today we are moving rapidly under President Trump toward authoritarianism. More and more power resting in fewer and fewer hands. Mr. President, as we speak right now, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man on the planet, is attempting to dismantle major agencies of the federal government which are designed to protect the needs of working families and the disadvantaged. These agencies were created by the U.S. Congress, and it is Congress's responsibility to maintain them, to reform them, or to end them. It is not Mr. Musk's responsibility. What Mr. Musk is doing is patently illegal and unconstitutional and must be ended. Mr. President, 2 weeks ago, President Trump attempted to suspend all federal grants and loans. An outrageous and clearly unconstitutional act. And as I hope every sixth grader, every kid in the sixth grade in this country knows, under the Constitution and our form of government, the president can recommend legislation, he can support legislation, he can veto legislation, but he does not have the power to unilaterally terminate funding passed by the Congress. It is Congress, the House and the Senate, who control the purse strings. But in this move toward authoritarianism, it is not just the Congress that is being attacked. It is our judiciary. This weekend, the Vice President of the United States, a graduate of Yale Law School, who clerked for a Supreme Court justice, said that, and I quote, "Judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power," end quote. Really? I thought that one of the major functions of the federal courts is to interpret our Constitution and, when appropriate, serve as a check on the unconstitutional power of the executive. That's not just what I believe. That is what I suspect every legal scholar and lawyer in America understands to be the case. Further, Mr. Musk, meanwhile, has proposed, and I quote, that the worst 1% of appointed judges be fired every year, end quote. And he demanded the impeachment of judges that have blocked him from accessing sensitive Treasury Department files. No doubt, under Mr. Musk's rule, it will be him and his billionaire friends who determine who the worst judges are. And no, Mr. Musk, I must tell you, you don't impeach judges who rule against you here in the United States. You may or may not know this, Mr. Musk, but under the U.S. Constitution, we have a separation of powers, brilliantly crafted by the founding fathers of this country in the 1770s, and it has worked pretty well throughout our country's history. We have an executive branch, we have a legislative branch, and we have a judiciary. Mr. President, what we are seeing now is not just an organized attack on the power of the Congress and the responsibility of the judiciary. Mr. Trump and his friends are not just trying to undermine two of the three pillars of our constitutional government, Congress and the courts, they are also going after the media in a way that we have never seen in the modern history of this country. Trust me that every member of Congress will tell you that the people working in the media and media organizations are not perfect. We have all had our experiences with the media. Media, like everything else, makes mistakes every day. But I do hope that every member of Congress understands that you cannot have a functioning democracy. You cannot have a free flow of information. You cannot have the pursuit of truth without an independent press. A press not intimidated by presidents of the United States, but a president who writes it and sees it the way they understand it to be. And in that regard, I want to mention to my colleagues what President Trump has done just in recent months. Mr. Trump has sued ABC and received a $15 million settlement. He has sued Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, and received a $25 million settlement. He has sued CBS and its parent company Paramount and is right now in negotiations over a settlement. He has sued the Des Moines Register for a poll results that he didn't like, and his FCC is now threatening to investigate PBS and NPR, major news outlets in our country. In other words, we have a president of the United States who is using his incredible power and the power of his agencies to go after media in this country who are saying and doing things he does not like. How are we going to have an independent media if journalists are looking over their shoulders, fearful that their reporting will trigger a lawsuit from the most powerful executive in the world? Mr. President, in the midst of all of this, I think that now is the time to ask a very, very simple question, something I think that is on the minds of millions of Americans. What do Mr. Musk, Mr. Trump, and their fellow billionaires really want? Now, it's not really taking over Greenland, the Panama Canal, all that stuff. The real question is, what is their end game? What is their goal? What are they striving for? And in my view, the answer really is not complicated. It is not novel. It is not new. It is, in fact, exactly what ruling classes throughout history have always wanted and have always believed to be their right. And that is more power for themselves, more control for themselves, and more wealth for themselves. And in their pursuit of more power, more control, and more wealth, they are determined to not allow democracy and the rule of law to get in their way. For Mr. Musk and his fellow oligarchs, the needs, the concerns, the pain, the ideas, the dreams of ordinary people are simply an impediment to what they, the oligarchs, are entitled to. And that is really what they believe. They are entitled to all of the wealth and the power they have, and they are determined to stop anyone who gets in their way. Mr. President, this process, this phenomenon that is going on right now is not the first time that we have seen this in our country's history. As I think many Americans understand, in pre-revolutionary America, before the 1770s, before the creation of the United States and the writing of our Constitution, the ruling class of that time governed through a doctrine called the divine right of kings. The belief that the King of England was an agent of God, that God appointed him, and that he was not to be questioned by mere mortal human beings. He was appointed by God. In modern times, we no longer have the divine right of kings. What we now have is an ideology being pushed by the oligarchs, which says that as a very, very wealthy group of people, often self-made, often the masters of revolutionary new technology, and as high IQ individuals, it is their absolute right to rule. In other words, the oligarchs of today are our modern day kings. And Mr. President, it is not just power that they want. Despite the incredible wealth that they currently have, they want more and more and more. Their greed has no end. Today, Mr. Musk is worth $402 billion. Mr. Zuckerberg is worth $252 billion, and Mr. Bezos is worth $249 billion. With combined wealth of $903 billion, these three people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million Americans. And not surprisingly, since Trump was elected, their wealth has soared. Musk has become $138 billion richer. Zuckerberg has become $49 billion richer. And Bezos has become $28 billion richer since Election Day in November. Meanwhile, Mr. President, while the very rich become much richer, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured in terms of health care. 25% of our seniors in this country are trying to survive on $15,000 a year or less. 800,000 Americans are homeless, and we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And real inflation-adjusted wages for the average American worker has not gone up in 50 years. Does anyone really think that the oligarchs give a damn about ordinary? Trust me, they don't.
All right, there, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it yourself right here off of the hot wax press. Uncle Bernie laying down the truth, the law, the people, built by the people, ran by the people, owned by the people. So, vampires are real. These kings are real. What did I get out of this? Out of this speech from Bernie, Congress, and all this? Death to the kings. That's what I got out of it. So, yeah, we're preparing here for a lot of stuff. It's going to get crazier. But I'm going to tell you folks right here, right now, Bernie Sanders knows what he's talking about. He's also profited himself. But the truth is out, right? They all have made illegal deals using their power, their influence within our government, justice system, and everything. Is it possible that they are getting rid of the people that are saying, you are the devil? They might be. I don't know. They will find out. And I would prepare, folks, right? They, like I said, Mr. Trump did say he was going to drain the swamp, right? If the numbers they have, if the things they show and they bring before Congress, the proof, the evidence that these people were 150 years old and they are vampires, and they're receiving payment today and still alive today, well, then we got problems, right? But we already know because we've been drilled into our heads that these vampires, these spirits, these things or whatever are real in the Bible. So, yeah, yeah. So Bernie just laid down the law, and the system was designed like that. So you didn't have someone come in. What basically these people fail to realize is they own nothing. Congress, Senate, the people, they are just employees of the American citizen. They own no equipment, they own no military, they own nothing. Now, how did these guys get so rich? Well, Mr. Bernie Sanders said it himself. Technology. And they probably stole a lot of it. Why? Because these guys are all computer hackers. They're all computer geniuses. They can steal and make it look like it was someone else. That's probably how they're getting their wealth. Internet has become a tool for them. Blackmail, stealing, all kinds. Yeah, it might be Bernie might be right. Uncle Sanders might be right. Yeah, yeah. So here we are, the citizens. We're disabled. We're old. We're some people working, right? Some people, some of us, we go out try to make a couple dollars just to survive. And here, these people they're tyrants. They're tyrants. They're saying we're good, but yet I feel some kind of a sleight of hand here or something. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. We'll keep up to date on it. There is new news out about the airplane that crashed in Canada. Uh, Came in too hot or something, and it wasn't the wind, right? Like the news was saying, we all thought they were saying, well, there was, weather, crosswinds and stuff like that, and could have been wind shear or whatever. But there's actually footage that came out. So I was wrong about that. It wasn't the weather. Well, weather might have still played a part in it. It looked pretty snowy and windy. But supposedly it just came in hot, came in too hot, and wing broke off, and the cockpit and the capsule and everything flipped upside down. Thank God there was no major death. Thank God. You folks have a great day. Thanks, Miss Debbie, for stopping in. You folks have a good day. I'll be back later.